A very good morning to you. Welcome to the West Ham Voice on Thursday morning. It's about half an hour to an hour before the announcement that we're all waiting to hear at 9 o'clock. Of course, we already know, we already heard on Wednesday that Julen Lopetegui has finally been relieved of his duties at West Ham United as our head coach, and Graham Potter will be unveiled as West Ham manager or head coach, we still don't know yet, at a press conference which has been arranged for 9 o'clock this morning. Now, Lopetegui's sacking happened, it was announced shortly after 3 o'clock on Wednesday. And my understanding is that Graham Potter at the same time was with his agent, John Morris of Wasserman, and Tim Steidten at the London Stadium, putting together the finishing touches on the media side of things, like photos, probably a pre-recorded interview, and so on. Now, despite what you think of the handling of all this, and let's be brutally honest, it has been an absolute fiasco in the way things have been done at West Ham. The one thing I believe almost every West Ham fan will agree on is that Lopetegui simply had to go. It has been one hell of a week. But as from Thursday, as from today, the hope is that West Ham United can start to refocus on what happens on the football pitch, and as well as looking forward to what business we can do in the winter transfer window. Now, thank goodness, we still have plenty of time, plenty of games available in the Premier League to get things right, and hopefully to stop us from being the Premier League's whipping boys. We're hoping that Potter brings with him a style of football that the players, especially the players and the fans, can get on board with, can understand. And that is, a more solid and cohesive unit, as well as being a bit more entertaining on a consistent level. And who knows, maybe even we might be lucky enough to go on an FA Cup run, which would somewhat ease the pain of the season so far. Now, as mentioned, we also have plenty of time in the transfer window to bring in necessary reinforcements to add real depth to the current squad that we have. But I'll talk about transfers in a moment. The one thing that we can expect from Graham Potter is hopefully to be a little bit more organised at the back. He tends to prefer playing with a back three and wing backs, but given Jean-Claire Todibo's injury, which has seen him fly out to France to get it seen to, it's going to be interesting to see what Potter does with the squad currently available to him. Potter will take charge of training on Thursday, and it's his intention that he will also be in the dugout for our FA Cup away game at Aston Villa on Friday evening. He's going to have over 6,000 West Ham fans there to support him and the team, so let's hope he gets us off to a flying start. So what is the deal for Potter? Well, it's been agreed, a 2.5-year deal, and dependent on who you listen to on social media, it's either a straight 2.5-year deal with no strings attached, or it's a deal where there are break clauses inserted into the contract where both parties can trigger at any time should they think that things aren't going to plan. Now, to be honest, I actually think, for a change, that's actually a sensible thing. Because if Potter finds himself in a situation where he's not being given the resources or the ability to succeed at West Ham, then he can just walk away from West Ham United. And counter to that, if Potter doesn't deliver to West Ham's expectations, then we too can terminate the deal. Kind of makes sense. Now, just what success will look like for West Ham this season is anyone's guess. We've been perpetually stuck around 14th place in the league for a considerable amount of time, and it will be pretty much unfair to expect Potter to deliver or to be challenging for a European spot in the league. Or would it? Having said that, if we go on a good run, there's 18 games left in the league. We can accumulate more than enough points to really push for Europe. So it is possible. But in fairness, I doubt many West Ham fans will be thinking that this is a realistic target, given just how bad the first half of the season has been. Maybe the demands will be at least a top half finish, maybe in the top 10, and perhaps, as I've mentioned, a decent cup run. But Potter is going to have much more to deal with than just how many points he manages to get. Of course, it's important. It's the most important thing. But he's also going to have to be dealing with quite a disaffected squad who seem to have had the life sucked out of them this season. And many players are a mere shadow on what we know they're capable of producing. He needs to get the best out of the likes of Mohamed Kudus, Jared Bowen when he comes back from his injury, Lucas Paquetá, and Edson Alvarez. They're all delivering to we know that they can deliver to a much higher standard than they have been. And maybe a change in manager, a change in squad, a change in formation, a change in tactics will go a long way to achieving that. Also, if he hasn't already done so, Potter needs to assess what we need in this transfer market in order to add real strength and depth and quality to the squad. Look, as an amateur coach, I would say we need another centre-back, a box-to-box midfielder, and a pacey striker. But what do I know? Maybe Potter will assess the squad as well as the academy and determine that he already has the players available to him to help in all those areas. Maybe we might also look at the possibility of calling back some of our loan players. Naifa Gerd is a centre-back that we need. Freddie Potts, all right, not necessarily the box-to-box midfielder, but certainly a good defensive midfielder who's having yet another excellent season at Portsmouth, and Callum Marshall at Huddersfield, who's scoring goals there for the club. I don't know what the loan deals are set. Maybe it's not likely, it's not possible to bring them back. Therefore, if it's not possible, then the transfer window and the current academy that we have might help Potter in improving the squad. Thank goodness that the transfer market itself is open until the 3rd of February at 11 o'clock. There's plenty of time to do business. But it will also be interesting to see what areas Potter himself focuses on. Does he think we need improving in defence, midfield, and up front? That's the whole team, isn't it? It's also going to be interesting to see who he works alongside to manage the transfer window. Now, we all know that Karen Brady played a huge role in the negotiations to bring Potter to West Ham. Now, ordinarily, you would expect technical director Tim Steidten to have done this, to have played a bigger role. But as we're all too aware, Steidten's role has been somewhat diminished at the club. And although he's been part of the process of bringing Potter to West Ham, it's just not clear how much of a part he's had in the negotiation part. Probably very little by the look of things. Now, I'm told that Potter is willing to see how well he can work with Tim Steidten in this transfer window. And it really is Steidten's chance to demonstrate that he really can add more value to West Ham United. Now, we've all seen the photo, the recent photo of Steidten talking to Potter at the Leicester game last month. And we've all been hearing for a while about some of the things that potentially Tim Steidten has been up to. Apparently, he was the one accused of leaking information to the press when David Moyes was still at the club, which culminated in the falling out between the two of them. And more recently, about Lopetegui, again, leaking stuff to the press. And again, the outcome was of a falling out between Steidten and Lopetegui. Now, Lopetegui's journalist friend, Guillaume Balaguer, suggested that someone at the club, referring to Steidten, had been throwing fuel on the fire and making it really difficult for Lopetegui to do his job. To be honest with you, I don't know where Tim Steidten's job is at this moment in time. I keep hearing that it currently hangs in the balance. And if he doesn't deliver in this transfer window, then there are people that Potter might be looking at to bring in to replace him, and also to replace his international scouting brother, Moritz Steidten, and also the so-called data guru analyst, Max Hahn, who, again, Steidten brought in. Things could get pretty interesting at West Ham United once Potter has settled in. It's suggested that Potter would love to reunite with Kyle Macauley, who has kind of been Potter's right-hand man since the days that they were both at the same Swedish club, Östersund. Now, Potter was manager there between 2011 and 2018. And at that time, Macauley was his chief scouting analyst. When Potter moved to Swansea in 2018, Macauley followed him and took up the role of chief scout. The same thing happened again when both men moved to Brighton between 2019 and 2022. And again, this is when Macauley became head of scouting. And the same thing happened again when Potter went to Chelsea in 2022. Macauley followed him again as head of scouting. Now, since Potter's dismissal of Chelsea, Macauley has stayed at Chelsea, but his role has been somewhat diminished from head of scouting to chief analyst. Now, as I mentioned, Potter may well want Macauley to join him at West Ham, but it'll be interesting to see whether he requests this to happen now or in the summer. Look, if he's giving Steidten a chance to work with him, then maybe Potter won't ask for Macauley now. But that's another reason why it's going to be very interesting to see how Steidten and Potter get on. Maybe, if it doesn't work out, West Ham and Potter will have a full 6 months to negotiate with Chelsea to allow Macauley to leave in the summer. But why would Macauley be so important to Graham Potter? Well, we know what Potter is likely to bring to West Ham. He has a preference for playing through at the back, like I've said. He loves to use wide players, wing backs. He will continually rotate his front players depending on the opposition that we face. He will expect his attacking players to go wide and support the wing backs, almost doubling up, which then allows central midfielders, central players to use up the space created. So it's going to be interesting to see how he uses the likes of Wan-Bissaka, Emerson, Bowen, Kudus, Somerville. He's got opportunity to use a 3-4-2-1 system at West Ham. Look, don't get carried away. Don't get too hung up on the fact that I've got Alvarez in there as a centre-back. That's only because Jean-Claire Todibo is injured at the moment. But he could use, when Todibo's back, he could use the likes of Mavropanos, Todibo, Kilman as his three at the back, and then use the likes of Wan-Bissaka and Emerson as his wing-backs, two in the middle, and then use two attacking players to sit just behind a striker. Of course, we've got Todibo coming back, Bowen coming back, whoever we bring in the transfer window as well. But it just gives you an idea of what Potter can do. Now, before I talk about what Macauley brings, if you want to go to Potter's first Premier League game in charge, this is your opportunity to do so. Football Prizes are offering 2 hospitality tickets to the West Ham Fulham game. The game is on Tuesday, the 14th of January at the London Stadium at 7:30 p.m. The competition itself ends on Friday, the 10th of January at 7:30, and there are only 65 tickets available. So for your chance to win 2 hospitality tickets, do go to the footballprizes.co.uk website and enter that competition. And good luck if you do. So if Potter were to team up with Macauley, what would Macauley bring to West Ham United? Well, the list of players that he will have been involved in scouting is a kind of a who's who of Premier League talent. At Brighton, while he was head of scouting there, the club oversaw the arrival of Leandro Trossard, who's now gone to Arsenal, Marc Cucurella and Moises Caicedo, who have now both gone to Chelsea, ironically, when Macauley moved there. And at his time at Chelsea, They've seen the arrivals of Enzo Fernandez, Noni Madueke, Nicholas Jackson, and of course, Cole Palmer. Now, there are, of course, another two players who were brought in during Macaulay's time at Chelsea who might well be on West Ham's radar. One of them is Carney Chukwuemeka, and the other one, Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall. Now, one of the areas of the park that we desperately need to address is, of course, central midfield. We really need a central box-to-box midfielder. And someone like Dewsbury-Hall could be the ideal player for that. Now, of course, we don't know if Macauley will come to West Ham now. These could be players maybe for the future, but it just gives you an indication of what Macauley can bring to West Ham United should Potter ask for him to join him at West Ham. Now, another individual that Potter may also want to reunite with is Dan Ashworth. Ashworth was Brighton's technical director during all of Potter's time at the club. And it is said they had a very good working relationship. Now, since then, Ashworth has gone on to be sporting director at Newcastle, and then he was lured to become sporting director at Man United until December 2024. Now, Man United paid a hefty fee to get him out of his Newcastle contract, and they also had to wait 5 months whilst Newcastle put him on gardening leave. Now, ironically, though, since joining Man United, he saw a difference of opinion on how things should be run at Man United with new owner Sir Jim Ratcliffe. And one of the things that they didn't see eye to eye in is who should take over for Ten Hag. And once Ruben Amorim's appointment had been confirmed, Ashworth left Man United by mutual consent. Now, look, Ashworth is highly regarded in the footballing circles, having been England's Director of Development for 5 years before taking the role on at Brighton. So the thought of Ashworth and Macauley joining Potter at West Ham has to be quite mouth-watering. And it would mean that Potter is not just here to manage the here and now, which seems to have been our problem with the managers over the past few years. It could mean that Potter would be looking to building something at West Ham over the long term. And this is something that I've been banging on about for quite some time. We want to see a manager who comes in, of course, to manage the squad that he has, but also to help build the academy and get those good players coming through in order to be knocking on the door of the senior squad, and also to bring in players who are potentials, bringing them in at a low value and selling them on for a huge profit in order to reinvest in the squad that we have. Isn't this what we expected of Tim Steidten? Look, should we get someone like Ashworth, again, more likely in the summer rather than now, it would inevitably mean the departure of Tim Steidten. Now, whether Ashworth would oversee a better transfer strategy than Steidten remains to be seen. At Man United, for example, he oversaw a number of big money deals. For example, Lenny Yoro, Matthias de Ligt, defensive midfielder Manuel Ugarte, and striker Joshua Zirkzee. That he brought in a talent of around about 200 million euros. And you can't say that they've all been really that good. Some of them have been injured. Some of them have just not hit the ground running at all. However, when he was at Newcastle, it was a completely different experience. He brought in the likes of Alexander Isak, Anthony Gordon, Sven Botman, and Nick Pope. And they've all been relatively good and successful at Newcastle. So just like Macauley, Ashworth has also got an eye for talent. Look, there's going to be a lot more to come with this saga, but first things first. We welcome Graham Potter to West Ham United. Let's see how he gets on with Tim Steidten and whether we can get the right players in during the transfer window. Let's see how he can get this team to play a lot better than it has, get more out of the likes of Mohamed Kudus, Alvarez, Paquetá, Bowen, and so forth. And then we can worry about the dream team that could materialize in the near future. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please do hit that like button if you've enjoyed the content. Please also do subscribe to the channel. Like I said, it's free of charge. All the content is free. Leave your comments. Tell me what you think. Tell me how you think Graham Potter is going to do at West Ham. Is he going to be a success? Fingers crossed. Thank you for watching and listening, and I will see you all very soon.